Welcome to the CT Educator Podcast. I am your host, Karina Hogan. I am a registered CT technologist with 20 years of experience and knowledge. I help new CT technologists level up their CT training so that you can become a successful technologist. I'm also a mom and committed to sharing my knowledge and expertise to help you build your confidence, know the CT basics so that you can deliver quality patient care. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the CT Educator Podcast. So, hope you guys are having a great week. It has been raining a lot here in Chicago. So, yesterday was just a downpour of rain. It was raining like it was going out of style, pretty much. So made the commute to, some priorities that I had to do over the weekend a little bit challenging. And considering it rained on Saturday and I had to work on Saturday as well. So I hope you guys are having a great week. It's nice and sunny today and just the start of a new week. Can you believe that we're going to be in October here pretty soon? That's pretty freaking wild. So, yeah. All right. So, in today's episode, I am starting a series. Okay. So, it's something that you'll see every month, as far as this podcast progresses. And it is something that I would like to call CT Trauma Stories. So, I'm going to start a series on that. And maybe I can bring this weekly as this podcast progresses, and we'll just kind of go from there. So today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a specific trauma case that was very unique. And it's one of those trauma stories that I will remember probably forever. Okay. So this was in the middle and in the height of COVID. So it was in August of 2020 we were right in the middle of the pandemic and shit hit the fan already. And it just, the hospital was completely just flooded with everything. So needless to say, there was a motorcycle crash that they had transported to the trauma hospital that I worked at. I was working overnight at that time and I hadn't switched to day shift just yet. So patient comes in, they had to airlift him. So, of course, had to land because we do have the helicopters that land on top of the roof of our hospital. So he was in pretty bad shape. So, of course, doctors order an entire pan scan on him. And so he comes to CT. And the one thing that I noticed on him was his face was just really deformed and there was just something just wrong there. Naturally, I'm like, this guy has a shit ton of fractures. You could just see, and it's just those fractures in the extremities that move that kind of just it just kind of gives you the goosebumps kind of. So, yeah, he comes in, motorcycle crash. So the backstory to it is he was in the city of Chicago, very common area. There is a Hispanic community called Pilsen. So he was in the Pilsen community riding his motorcycle, doing wheelies. Naturally, he was not wearing a helmet. Now, if some of you that are listening that do not live in the state of Illinois, the state of Illinois is a no helmet state, just like Indiana. Now, the state that I come from, Nevada, it is required by law that you wear a helmet when you ride a motorcycle. Here in the state of Illinois, I'm telling you, it's a little scary. So he was doing wheelies and he'd wiped out. And of course, he went face first into the street and the pavement. So if you could just imagine. So he comes to us and we have, I shit you not, the entire group of ER nurses, the entire trauma team, the trauma attending. I think I had 3 respiratory therapists. There was like 4 techs, and every nurse probably left their patient to be in CT with this guy. It was just a very chaotic situation because his pressure was not ideal. You know, he was crashing constantly. Like we would get through 2 exams, he was crashing. So going back to what I was saying, that when we had moved him over to the CT table, like his face just didn't look right. Just something about it was just not, it just didn't click to me. And so at one point, he was crashing so bad that we had to, infuse a bunch of fluids, like restart more IVs on him and give him blood and doing chest compressions. Like it was something that was just like, so not even any TV show could compare to what we went through that night. So I'm asking one of the nurses and I'm saying, hey, what's wrong with this guy's face? Like, why is his face so bloody? Well, come to find out, not only when I scanned him, he had a bunch of facial fractures. I mean, his face was completely displaced and he had fractures everywhere. So he spent probably a few months in the trauma ICU that we have. The nurse proceeds to tell me, well, he hit the pavement first. And of course, and it took the skin off of his face and pushed it all the way to his forehead. I was like, you have to be freaking kidding me. No. So we had to turn on the lights because we had to restart IVs and he was like crashing so many times. And so when I took a good look at him, like you could start to see the layers of skin and like bone and everything. And it was like, holy shit. Like he really just scraped all the, his entire face, all the skin of his face, and it's all the way up to his forehead. Like, I kid you not. It was the most interesting case because I think it was maybe several days later. He comes back down, wired shut jaw, and they had reconstructed and fixed his face. So we had to rescan him, of course, just to make sure. And he has, he had all these plates and screws and everything on this scan. And it took him a good while, I think up to a good year. Like they sent him to a rehab as soon as he was, recovered. They sent him to a rehab because he had to learn to walk again, learn how to talk again. And I'm always curious on what happens, after these patients get discharged from the hospital, if they make it. Like the trauma attending really didn't give him a good prognosis, but he fought and he wanted to live and he walked out of that hospital. It's one of the craziest cases I've ever done. And it just brings me to the point where wearing a helmet, especially if you guys listening that are motorcycle riders, it's super important because he could have lost his life. And I can't tell you time and time again how many motorcycle crashes happen that we scan just on a weekly basis that people don't understand. Like if you hit your head, like you're done for. And they just do not get that. So it is one of those cases that I have in my memory box that I will never forget because we never forget, those memorable cases because they always stick with us. And I'm just happy that he recovered and that they were able to, fix all the fractures and actually put his face back together. That was amazing. They were able to put the skin back too. So like craniofacial got involved, and I know the craniofacial team that we have at the hospital I work at, they're actually pretty good and just did a remarkable job on this patient's face. So what I highly recommend that if you are a motorcycle rider, please wear a helmet. Even if your state is a no helmet state, just do yourself a favor and do it because nothing is worth having a traumatic brain injury, losing your life, because you could have been a little bit smarter to wear a helmet for safety. Now, the old analogy still applies. You dress for the crash, not for the ride. So that is my trauma story for this week. And I hope that was insightful for you guys, because trauma stories, I have a ton of stories, and I could probably tell stories all day long. And that's why I enjoy just sharing and never gatekeeping on this podcast. So I hope you guys have a great week. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, send me a DM on Instagram. I'm always, loving to talk to people, engaging with people, and just getting to know you guys. And, putting that educational content out there for you, which I do have some things in the works. So come on over to Instagram so you know exactly what they are. So yeah. So, anything, if you have a story, let me know. I'll be happy to tell it on the podcast, no names given, HIPAA. So thank you for joining me on this episode. Hope you guys have a great week, and I will chat with you next week. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you would like to share your CT experience, have an interesting story to share, or need help in your CT training, please email me your questions at contact@thecteducator.com. Come on over to Instagram @thecteducator. My DMs are always open, so let's chat. Thank you for joining me on this podcast, and happy scanning.